and welcome to What She Said. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Moira.
My name is Paige.
And I'm Emma.
And we will be talking about a new documentary that just landed on Disney Plus. It's very controversial, hard watch, and it is called Devil in the Family: The Fall of Ruby Franke. Lots of trigger warnings around this conversation. Let's get into it. I saw an advert come on Disney Plus, and it was for a documentary called Devil in the Family: The Fall of Ruby Franke. If you don't know who Ruby Franke is, that's not a problem because I had no idea who she was either. So it's a 3-part series on Disney Plus. It opens with video footage from August of 2023, so actually quite recently. And we see a boy ringing a doorbell of a neighbor's house, and the neighbor, he's an older guy, so he takes a while to get to the door, and by that time the boy starts walking off. He hears the door open, so he turns around, and the man goes, "Can I help you there?" And he says, "Yeah, can you do me 2 favors?" And he said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "Well, actually, maybe only one. Can you take me to a police station, please?" And he said, "Well, what's that about?" And he said, "Oh, it's personal reasons." And he says, come and have a sit. And so he has like a little table and chairs out the front of his house near his front door. Anyway, he tells the boy to have a sit so they can have a talk. This sparks the arrest of Ruby Franke and a lady called Jody Hildebrandt. Who's Ruby Franke, right? In 2015, Ruby Franke launched a YouTube channel that documented her life as a married Mormon mother of 6 living in Springville, Utah. At her peak, Ruby Franke admitted that she was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and had over 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube. And then in 2020, Ruby faced increasing criticism and concern for the children from viewers over the strict parenting style, and in particular the punishments she dealt out. So you do see her, she's recording on her phone, and she's like pretending like, she's doing this all in front of the camera. She's actually still recording. Then when she turns to her son, she's like, "Could you at least pretend to be interested in this?" So you actually do see the other side of her. Some of these examples of her punishments include telling her 6-year-old daughter that she needed to go hungry because she forgot to take her school lunch. Now, in the video, she discussed how it was the 6-year-old's responsibility to make her own lunch and pack it. And then she said, because the teacher called her mom and said she's forgot her lunch. And the mom said, well, that's her job. That's her responsibility. If she hasn't got any, then she goes hungry. She needs to go hungry and she needs to learn this lesson. And please do not give her any food. And she was like, "I don't care if the teacher's uncomfortable. I hope she doesn't give her any food. She needs to learn this lesson." She's 6.
Exactly.
That's one example. She then was making her kids work outdoors without the proper sun protection, so then they ended up getting sunburned. She was taking away her teenage son's bed and made him sleep on a beanbag for 7 months.
7 months.
Because he had been playing pranks on his sibling. And the other example I have is that she saw her youngest 2 children, and I think at the time they were 6 and 8, go without Christmas presents on Christmas Day after what she calls was long patterns of selfishness. So apparently Ruby was very upset with the criticism that she got from her viewers and subscribers, and she publicly dismissed critics, stating that she was only demonstrating what a responsible mother looks like. I know. I can hear everyone going, "What the fuck?"
So I've actually also watched this and I was horrified. Have you seen it, Paige?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, you watched it? Yeah.
Yeah. So this was fueled. So years ago, so they're Mormons, and the Mormon church actually encouraged families to go on and become, social media sensations or advocates to demonstrate perfection in life and how good that you can be. And this is, I guess, what Ruby's initial motivation to become a social media influencer. I guess that was her initial motivation, to try and do God's work and do some outreach work through social media as a tool.
Yeah. So then we meet Jody. So Ruby was referred to by family friends to Jody Hildebrand to counsel her eldest son Chad, the one that she made sleep on the beanbag. Because apparently he had been acting out at home and at school. What that means, I don't know, and I don't believe it would be acting out. It would probably be something every other child does. That is a teenager who's going through hormonal changes.
He
So
admitted that he was sneaking out and kissing girls and sneaking girls in.
doing teenage
So,
things, yeah.
yeah, that's
So
just normal
Jody
teenage.
also encouraged Ruby's husband to join these weekly virtual men's sessions because this was during COVID as well. Jody embedded herself so much into the family that she ended up moving in with the Frankies in their Springville home.
I think that she was having demonic possession.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Prior
so
to that.
so that's what she claimed. So she occupied the eldest daughter's room because she was going off to uni in a couple of weeks anyway, so she wasn't too bothered about it. Jari reported that when she returned from uni one day, that she went into Jodie's, well, her old room, but she found these oils and candles strewn all over the room. Now,
Yeah.
the husband, Kevin, actually says to the filmmakers on camera, it was much more than a friendship. So that just gives you an idea of how embedded they were together and how influential she became over Jodie. So Ruby began training as a coach in this thing called Connections, and it started as a podcast and then an Instagram account of Moms of Truth is what they ended up starting. And they shared their extreme views on parenting and discipline.
Didn't the whole channel start out at 8 passengers?
So that was Ruby's. So
Yeah,
then
and
Ruby and Jody had a Moms of Truth.
yeah.
So this had the 8 passengers finished after all the negative feedback
Yes.
from
Yeah.
the whole
from pretty much what happened with Chad losing his bedroom for 7 months, I think.
Yeah. So then they were sharing their extreme views. Jody then convinced Ruby to separate from her husband and kick her son Chad out of the house. And Ruby issued these conditions to the husband that was like, you cannot make contact with us, not with the kids. And the eldest daughter disobeyed that and ended up reaching out to her own father. Ruby just cut her off. Yeah. So then it started to get pretty concerning for the neighbors. Started to be like, why is Kevin gone? Why is this woman moved in and what's going on? And Ruby then started spending more of her time at Jody Hildebrand's house, which was about 4 or 5 hours away from their own house. But she was leaving her 2 teenage daughters in the family home for weeks on end. And the police were contacted by neighbors would call, the eldest daughter would call, but because they couldn't, they didn't have a warrant because apparently there was no clear issue, they couldn't get on to Ruby or Kevin because at that time Kevin wasn't answering any phone calls. He had even blocked some of the neighbors' numbers because he thought he was trying to do good and get back into Ruby's life and one day she'll take him back. The fallout actually happened, and it goes back to the original footage where you see the eldest son visiting the neighbor's house, and then you hear the end of the call, which was the neighbor speaking with the police saying, you need to calm this boy. He's broken out of a house. He is emaciated and he's malnourished. He has duct tape still on his ankles. And the police later confirmed that he had escaped from his home by climbing out a window and running to nearby houses to get help. An arrest report showed that the boy also had deep lacerations from being tied up with rope. Police found Frankie's 10-year-old daughter in the family home. She was also malnourished and both were taken to hospital. And it's reported that Ruby believed that the 2 younger children were demonically possessed. And that's why she was doing the things that she was doing to the kids. So upon searching Hildebrand's home, the police found rope, handcuffs, medical gauze, and a mixture of cayenne pepper and honey in a safe room. And they also found a handwritten journal where Ruby had chronicled the day-to-day events and how she tried to exorcise her children.
Yeah. So the cayenne pepper, that was used to put on the wounds of the rope wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also
And then gaffer tape.
to point out the fact that when the neighbor called, he was that distressed.
Distraught.
How the youngest son had presented to him, he was in tears. He was getting choked up with how he was trying to explain exactly how this young boy had presented to his home.
Yeah. And it was also reported that the son who escaped also told the police officers that he and his sister would be forced to stand in the sun, tied down to weights, and forced to jump on a trampoline all day.
All day. And then they showed pictures of that trampoline with the lawn mat.
Yeah, and at times they were also driven into the desert and forced to run. Ruby Franke was then charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse and ultimately pleaded guilty to 4 of those counts. And Hildebrand also pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. In 2014, were sentenced. Ruby was to serve 1 to 15 years for each of the 4 counts of abuse that she pled guilty to. In Utah, apparently, if a person is given consecutive sentences, then the maximum prison sentence that they serve is 30 years. So that means that she will serve between 4 and 30 years in prison.
Wow.
Hildebrand was sentenced to 4 consecutive terms of 1 to 15 years in prison for each count of the aggravated child abuse. So similarly, she will serve between 4 and 30 years in prison. But during her sentence, Ruby told the court that she was so disorientated that she believed dark was light and right was wrong. Franke's 4 children have since been taken into custody by the Division of Child and Family Services and will remain in professional care for the aggravated psychological and emotional injuries suffered. So I'm guessing you want to wonder what happened to the dad. Well, he has filed for custody of the children, and that case is ongoing, considering he left with no contact with any of the kids.
Yeah.
So it was a really hard. I did not expect any of that. I didn't watch any trailers on it. I just thought this is a documentary about some YouTube person and the fall of her. And I thought that was going to be more about what it was. I didn't realize the extent of what she did, putting her kids through what she did.
Yeah, exactly.
It gave me really bad memories of the Turpin family when the mum and the dad had like 12 or 13 kids and had them locked up and chained to their bed and, you know, weren't allowed to look out the window and couldn't go to school and everything. Like, it does give me those terrible vibes.
Yeah.
I had watched on Facebook, and that's where I saw the arrest of Ruby Franke. So I had seen the arrest of Ruby Franke, but I didn't actually understand the background to it.
Yeah. So I guess a little bit more information. Jodie was very good at brainwashing people, I guess, and alienating people from their loved ones.
Yeah.
And she has been accused of that many times from different people in the documentary. She doesn't even have a relationship with her own family.
Yeah.
And it's almost like she wants other women to have that same alienation as what she does, is what the documentary...
Very controlling.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess Kevin was definitely brainwashed. He went to the police because Ruby had messaged him and said, you need to go and pick our youngest 2 children up from the police station.
Redeem yourself.
He had no idea. He just went there straight away. That was the first time that Ruby had contacted him in over a year, I believe.
Yeah.
So he was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And when he went there, he was that brainwashed. And the religion aspect of it is that they believed that Jodie was being possessed, and which is why a lot of weird things went on, and ultimately ended with him leaving the house for whatever Jodie had manipulated in for whatever reason. But it was all to do with God and the devil, pretty much, behind everything. And that's their belief. So when the police tried to say, your children have been abused and this is what's happened, and they wanted to show him photos, he didn't believe them. He thought that was the devil's work. I think that's horrible. The fact that somebody can be brainwashed to that extent.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess it comes down to your belief, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How much you truly believe in whatever it is you believe in.
How susceptible you are.
Yeah. So they admit they, along with many other people, believed that COVID was the beginning of the rapture, which is, I guess, why they believed Jodie so much. She was very believable, and because she was playing on that rapture aspect of the Bible, of the second coming. They admit that they weren't the only ones. Their church believed that. Many other people believed that around the world. I think the whole situation was horrific.
Absolutely.
It's hard when it comes to kids, isn't it? I just, when I watched that, and I, like I said, it gave me memories of, I watched a documentary on the Turpin family and how that daughter broke out, took a mobile and ran to this street and called the police. They initially didn't believe her until she was like, I've got photos, and she's shaking. She's like, I've got photos on my phone because they told me, like my brothers told me that you would want to see photos, and so I can prove to you that I'm telling the truth. And you just think to yourself, how do you do that to your own kids? How do you do that to any child?
Exactly.
But how do you do it to your own kids? Like, it just blows my mind. I really don't, I don't think I can ever understand how someone could do that.
No.
It's terrible.
Yeah, well, obviously, my background, I've seen quite a bit. I have been exposed to a lot of horrible situations working in child protection. It is unbelievable the amount of horrific things that family members, parents, aunties, uncles, cousins can do to their loved ones.
Exactly. I can vouch for that too.
And that's the whole thing of, it's normally a cycle of hurt. So
hurt people.
Hurt people. And I say that all the time, hurt people. And it is the fact that these people would have grown up in a similar situation.
Or similar religious beliefs.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
right.
Yeah, I guess that was okay in her eyes. But everybody else could see that it's not okay, that it's not normal.
Yeah, sorry, when I say similar religious beliefs, I don't mean that that's what all Mormons do. I just mean, like, because
she grew up.
Yeah, because there was a lot of the neighbors that were on there that were like, we know this is wrong, like, this is terrible. So it's that was the brainwashing culty side of Jodie, trying to manipulate her and almost be, wanting to be center of attention by getting rid of the kids.
Yeah. Exactly. She was clearly in love with Ruby.
I think she liked a control element of it all. It sounded like.
They suggested that it was sexual.
But even Kevin pointed out that she had a real problem with men.
Yes. Yeah. And we don't know what happened to her. That's what I mean. Like, we don't know people's backgrounds. We don't know how they grew up.
That's right.
But to impose that on other people, that's the issue.
Yeah.
That's right.
And children.
Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to be their security, their safety. You're who they look to in times of need. You're not supposed to be the one inflicting that hurt.
That's right.
I found it a really interesting documentary, especially to come from Disney. That was interesting for me, for that was on Disney. I didn't expect that, but that was a really interesting insight into how fame can really change someone. So, like, I don't want to, like, and I expectedly, as they grow up, they don't want to be a part of this thing that was fun when they were 5 and 6. Now they're teenagers and they just want their own space.
Well, it was a job. They were her employees, which is what they said.
She made it like
and they would be paid $10 per video that they contributed to.
But she was really abusing that situation to make money from her kids.
Yeah, and that's what Shari said. Chad and her were the main attractions, the main event, and Ruby knew that those two pulled the ratings.
Because they could be, I think, because they could be complicit. Because if you've got younger kids, they're just going to do and say whatever they want to do and say, and if they don't want to, they're not going to. Or I guess if you have older kids, then you can tell them what to do and say, and they will.
Yeah.
But also, as Chad pointed out, he was a young, attractive teenager who would have had that teenage girl following as well.
Yeah. And I think that was most of the followers were around their age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so an interesting watch, a hard watch, I find. I find it was
Mm,
really, I didn't almost want to watch it, but then I was like, I have to find, I guess I have to really understand. Like, it's in my head now, so now I have to get to the end of it to get that
Yeah.
yeah.
understanding and what happened and what the outcome was.
I
Mm.
must admit, I actually cried. I got tears
Yeah.
in the third episode. So that's
Is that when the
kind of when
policeman
you see
found
all
the
the
girl
abuse.
in the room?
Yeah,
I find
yeah.
it interesting that so the police went to Jodi's house because obviously they had the boy and he had said that his sister was still in the house. He hadn't seen her for a while, but he had heard her. I thought that was pretty
Hmm.
sad. And
Yeah,
um
exactly.
and then they were like, "You've got a safe here," but it would look like a door. And they had a pin code. What's the pin code? I don't know. Well, bullshit. You live in this house and you don't know what your pin code is.
Yeah,
And it turns out to be one, two, three, four,
exactly.
five, six. And he opened it and it was like a room with a bathroom in it. And that's where they find all the gauze and the rope and everything like that.
Cayenne
Hmm.
pepper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the police found the girl in a wardrobe. And
Mm.
she, I mean, understandably
Too
didn't
scared.
talk. She was too scared. She didn't move.
Hmm.
Yeah. Really sad.
Yeah, it really was. But an eye opener. It just goes to show that children are exploited far too much in this world.
Yes, and also you just never know what goes on behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Mm.
So don't judge. I mean, like you know what I mean? Like if those kids were going to school, they'd be like being teased for being skinny or smelly or dirty because they didn't look like she cared for them at all. And you just think to yourself, well, you have no idea what that kid is putting up with at home.
That's
Hmm.
right.
I
That's
heard a
exactly.
story about these brothers that went to school, same school together, and either one kid would be in the school or the other kid would be in the school. They were never at the school at the same time, and the teacher said to them, "I've had enough of this. What's going on? Either you're here or your brother's here, but why are you never here together? Like this is school. You have to both be at school." And he said,
Mm.
"Because we only have one pair of shoes, so." One day I get to wear the shoes and come to school, and then the
Oh,
next day my brother wears the shoes and he goes to school. I think it's just such a big lesson to teach your kids is to just not be judgmental of people. And
Yes.
you just don't, and I don't know whether they have that concept, but yeah, you just never know what goes on behind closed doors. And people can put on a front all they want. I mean, even women our age are putting on a front and really suffering at home. And the kids are
Yeah.
suffering as well, and they're seeing things that they shouldn't be seeing and experiencing things that they shouldn't be in their young age. Kids should be kids for as long as they can be kids.
Hmm. That's right.
agreed.
An interesting watch.
Absolutely. And I recommend it. Definitely trigger alerts there
Yeah.
for
A lot
people.
of trigger alerts.
Yeah, but it was very good, very interesting from a lot of facets. What social media really is and the push behind trying to become an influencer. I think they said when they first got there because they were all kind of a little bit mundane about it. They weren't really that interested except for Ruby. Then when they got their first paycheck from YouTube, it was like $80 and that motivated them. Kevin said that was when the devil entered their family. That
Apparently,
first.
money is the root of all evil.
Mm.
Mm. And they said at their best, they were making over
Hun
$100,000 per month.
yeah.
So lots of motivation there to get lots of views.
So there you have it. That was the fall of Ruby Frankie. If this is something that you want to have a look at yourself, you can find it on Disney Plus. And I guess this is a real conversation that you can have with your kids around social media. If any of what we've discussed has triggered something in you, please do reach out to someone close to you or some professional support to get through the hard conversations that we've discussed. You've been listening to What She Said. Thank you for listening to this hard episode. My name is Moira.
My name is Paige.
And I'm Emma.
And we'll catch you next time for some light entertainment. So tune into some Spill the Tea. Go and listen to our book club and what our latest book has been to get a bit lighter after this one.
Yeah.
Take care.